Denver, Gridiron and Hoops. Hey there, folks. Welcome to Denver, Gridiron and Hoops. We're going to start off strong here talking shit about KD. His ability to switch zip codes within the NBA because he doesn't get too comfortable in one area. He has commitment issues, to say the least. This is David McDougal. With me is Vinny McDougal, or as I like to call him, VMAC. And we are here to give you guys one hell of a show.
Yeah, people call me VMAC on the court as well, but I'm definitely a discount version of Temu version of dollar store version of the local Goodwill store version of T-Mac. So let's just get that part clear real quick. Before we dive in, though, all you listeners out there, drop us a follow. You know, if you've already made it this far in, why not? Throw a comment in the chat as well. But as per usual, before I start out, I got to talk to you about what I smashed recently, which Italians, I'm so sorry. You're not going to be happy with this whatsoever. You're probably already not happy with me because our spaghetti night includes a bottle of Prego. So just set your expectations low. But new tradition in this household to spice things up. We just buy different boxes of noodles to go with our spaghetti. It could be bow tie pasta. It could be salad pasta. It could be some kind of rotini I've never heard of in my life. We just throw it in there. The kids think it's new, even though it's the same old stuff. It's literally just noodles, sauce, and meat. But I'm fresh off that, so I'm feeling good right now. Excited to talk with our Denver GH fans out there and dive into some topics.
Yeah, I tell you what, I may not have a refined palate, but I really don't notice much of a difference between the different pastas.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody could educate us, right, on, you know, what is actually al dente and not, and, you know, the difference between a can of Prego and, you know, our local Italian restaurant fare. But it's probably more you and me than anybody else that has the problem.
Yeah, I tried recently to make some no-bake lasagna, and speaking of al dente, it was crispy.
Okay.
I tell you what, though, like all the little toppings, all the little individual things, it actually came out really well. But the fact that there was a crunch to it was really the thing that killed the dish. So
Yeah, we're not talking about the corners here. We're talking about middle of the casserole.
Yeah, I'm talking the whole shebang. So you know what that kind of reminds me of? You know, the crunchy bits, the parts you don't want. Dario Saric. I was very displeased when I read today that he's going to be taking up his player option, accepting it. Really, there's just nothing left but depression. That immediately kills our MLE.
Yep. I've never met you, Mr. Saric, and I don't like you. And your moves did not help anything in my book. But luckily for us, there's plenty to talk about tonight here on the conclusion of the NBA season. But I didn't like him, and I still don't.
Yeah, it's just unfortunately depressing, especially since the fact that he can't even play for us. I mean, he played so little that Bailey, my girlfriend, was like, "Who is that guy?" And she watches like 75 games in the season, if not more. So it kind of shows you how much that is hurting the Denver Nuggets. So well, I won't dwell on that too often. We've got the major blockbuster that happened. Kevin Durant moved for Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, number 10 pick, and 5 second rounders. Obviously, Dylan Brooks and the 5 second are probably just trade chips, although Dylan Brooks could maybe carve out a niche on that team. You never know. And then the news is that the Suns will more than likely be trading Jalen Green. But what's your take on that trade, Vinny?
Yeah, so back-to-back podcasts, back-to-back trades. So things are starting to heat up. Got to like that. I knew myself personally would try and draw some parallels and some comparisons between the Grizzlies trade and this trade, just to kind of see, you know, comparable how the layout was. So I got a few things to unpack. I'll start with your throw-in chip, Dylan Brooks, real quick. My take on him and his style of play and who he is and what he brings to a team. I equate him to what Draymond Green would be if he wasn't on Golden State for his career. Agitator, defender, tick everybody off, cause all kinds of problems, all kinds of chaos. Just so happens he doesn't have the two best shooters in the entire history of the NBA on the same team as him.
Yeah.
So he doesn't get the benefit of the doubt that Draymond Green does. And it was so funny to watch them two go at it throughout the year and in the playoffs, because I'm like, what are you complaining about Brooks for? You're the same dude. You just so happen to be playing with two of the best shooters of all time. So he, for a playoff team, he has a role. And, how many minutes he gets, to what extent that role is, he'll still be somebody that can, provide for a team, especially late in the playoffs, which is obviously what they're trying to do.
I do think there's a fine line between, say, Draymond Green and Lance Stevenson, though. Like not that he's that much of an I should say not that he is an airhead is kind of what I would say there, but yeah, I don't think that he's on that level. Defensive prowess and then also IQ. Like the thing that separates Draymond is telling the whole team where they need to be and things of that nature. But that's just at least my take on him.
Yeah, it is a tough comparison because obviously Draymond's Hall of Famer. But like I said, if you picture a world where Draymond is not on the Golden State Warriors his entire career, we would probably all have a much different take on who Draymond Green is as a person, as a player, as a career, as a Hall of Famer, because of all the leeway having that offensive prowess on your teams gives you.
Yeah.
So when you don't have to do anything offensively whatsoever, and your primary focus the entire game is just what can you contribute to us defensively, and it works, like that just puts you in a different element. But I don't want to spend a bunch of time on him. So outside of that, obviously, we saw the Rockets take a leap this year. So Ime Udoka, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. My fault, dude, if I'm not. Clearly is an elite coach, right? We saw him do it with the Celtics until he dipped his donuts in company coffee and found himself an exit.
Got some
But he's done it
creamer
now
on it.
again. Another young, talented team where he's bringing, up this young group of talent and building and growing that roster. So to what degree does this hinder the long term? Obviously, that's what everybody's going to look at. Like, hey, what are you giving up for the long term? More often than not, we see these long term moves don't necessarily pan out. Obviously, OKC winning the finals tonight is that clear-cut example of building, acquiring, not giving up your young assets, your young draft picks, drafting constantly, getting first-round picks. That doesn't always seem successful. I guess we could put the Nuggets in that category, right? They're pretty darn close, where they just played things close, didn't make any significant trades, drafted, developed. But even them, Aaron Gordon, right? That's a pretty significant trade if you'd ask me. I'm torn between win now, what do you say for the future? Me personally, and this is the fan in me speaking, I go for the now. Regardless of what Kevin Durant has done with other franchises, he's clearly motivated to win a ring. He clearly knows there's only so many years he has left. Why not make the move for a guy like KD? Bring him in with your young core and see what he can accomplish. So I lean more towards the KD side of the trade because I'm a firm believer in the NBA. What wins out trades is whoever gets the most talented player. And when you talk about draft picks, you can't predict that until years down the road. So I go right now, who won the trade? Anybody who gets the most talented player, and KD is that far and beyond.
Personally, the only way I do see them actually winning the trade is if they actually treat KD as a true number one option. Now I'm talking like legit 32 points per game. He shouldn't be a secondary option, especially not if he wants to kind of achieve any greatness in his career, because this is his chance. Because by all means, he's never done it himself. And the biggest problem I see with the Rockets is that they are a nice team, not a great team. And I don't think he's enough to put them over. And also, like me personally, like just watching Jalen Green, he was like one of my top 5 favorite young players to watch. So The fact that he was 23 years old, averaging like 21 points per game, still seemed to me like a good prospect. I know a lot of people say he's a very selfish player, but what 23-year-old is not? I don't think it was a wise choice because they fell for the same microcosm that Minnesota did in trying to microwave their development when the blueprint was clearly right there in front of them.
Yeah, it's tough. You're gonna have people on both sides. Like, is it too steep a price? Did you risk your future? And to your point, time will tell with what he brings to the table in terms of if he can get above that 30 a game. Talk about changing the landscape of the Rockets team and what they bring to the table. And it's hilarious you bring up Minnesota because according to reports, right? I don't know what's right and what's not. He turned down a trade to Minnesota. And if that doesn't tell Ant-Man, get out now while you can, I don't know what does. Because whether or not he wanted to play with Durant or not, the fact that an elite NBA talent was like, no thanks, I don't want to go to Minnesota. And could it be he didn't want to play Robin to Ant-Man's Batman? Could be. But I don't even know, after watching the past 2 seasons that Ant-Man's even there. I think a lot of people anointed him, but when you look, I don't even know that he's there or that he wants to be there. And I'm not talking about Minnesota. I'm talking about Batman.
I disagree on that. Just personally, from what I've watched of the guy, he's got the killer instinct. He has that alpha male presence, and like by all means, like there's some people that they just talk a lot, but I really do think that he's about it, and I hate it because I'm a Nuggets fan, but I have to watch it night in and night out when we play them, and he's got the word everyone loves to use. He's got dog. He's got that dog in him. But you mentioned OKC, and well, I think we both did. As we speak, they're putting a little whoop down on in Game 7. We decided to start this a little early because the conclusion seemed imminent. What is your take from the series? Obviously, got changed with Halliburton going out today.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure Adam Silver is going to listen to our podcast. So,
Oh, of course, he's a regular listener.
Since he's going to tune in, you first gave us the NBA Finals no one wanted to watch, and then you gave us a Game 7 that nobody wanted to see. And then within the first 10 minutes, the only star player on the other side of the ball gets hurt. And it's just an epic, to me, it's just an epic fail for this NBA postseason.
Yeah.
I know early on the ratings were really strong and there were some fun games. And it was so interesting. We've always seen, whether it's NFL, NBA, any postseason, things tighten up, right? They don't blow as many whistles in the NFL or NBA. Strike zones in the MLB shrink down a little bit. But this regular season was so soft in comparison to what they did this playoffs.
Yeah.
That teams still didn't know what to do quite, halfway through each of their playoff series. They're like, how do we get a call? What do we do to get a call? We saw these comebacks that were just ridiculous comebacks that should never happen, in part because of this just such a stark contrast between how this regular season was played and how this postseason was played. So, there were so many things that just caused it to be a weird playoffs, and then just the lack of star power. And I know the media's, SGA, Williams, Halliburton, Siakam, it still just didn't land, especially forcing us to suffer through 7 games of it. And then Game 7 was just an absolute flop.
Yeah.
Once Halliburton went down, everybody knew what was going to happen. Obviously, Indiana did their best through a couple quarters to keep it tight. Pat Connaughton dicing through, making layups, this and that. But to me, when I look at the whole season, it just felt like a little bit of a flop to me this year.
Yeah. And it's it's just kind of interesting, especially with the trades happening and such, like kind of forecasting what the next season's elite contenders is going to look like. Like, I think everybody would pencil in Houston to at least be a top 4 seed. Like I think that's a reasonable expectation, is top 4 seed. And like, if we're being real, they're probably going to be top 3. But that being said, who's going to fall in this equation. Is it going to be the Nuggets? Is it going to be the Thunder? Is it going to be the Wolves? Like, in order for them to rise, someone has to fall. So, just definitely interesting, especially in the East, because it's just always been so weak out there. It makes you wonder if some superstar is going to try to go out there and take advantage of that.
Yeah, I mean, you look, like you said, look at the landscape. So we got defending champions OKC. You have no reason to expect outside of injury that they won't be a top 1 or 2 seed. No reason whatsoever. You have Lakers who now have an off season together and possibly moves to come that we don't know about quite yet. And they finished what, 4 or 3, or did they drop to 6?
I'm not entirely sure. I think they were either 5 or 6.
So still they're trending. I would say they're trending up because Luka and LeBron have more time together. That by itself, you can't say that they're going to have a worse output. And they really turned it on in the second half of last season. They finished really strong. Rockets, as you mentioned. So, top team. Minnesota, I think, finished what, 6 or 7 though? Maybe it was 6. I forget where they finished, but they weren't in the top half. And I think obviously the Randall trade for Cat played a little bit into that. So you would expect them to get better as Ant gets better. So they're rising as well, and that's just 4 teams we just talked about right there.
Yeah, so,
go ahead.
So I was completely off. The Lakers finished 3rd.
Yeah,
Didn't even realize that. Nuggets were 4th, then Clippers, and then Timberwolves at 6th, and then the rest was just playing bubble crap. We had Warriors and then Grizzlies, but yeah. So the Houston Rockets were 2nd, so it's not like they didn't establish that already, that they were pretty dominant. I guess I could see them probably repeating that, and really it all just depends because every year is different. You know what I mean? Like, so for example, this year Thunder had 68 wins, and in 6th place Minnesota had 49, and then there was 3 teams with 50 wins, one with 52. I really don't see there being quite that disparity next year unless the Thunder really just are heads and shoulders above everybody and we're in the middle of a dynasty that we're not aware of.
true.
Yeah, it's because like even on the East side, it's pretty similar where it's top heavy with the Cavs at 64 and the Celtics at 61. And then others like 3 floating around 50, and then everything else under. All it takes is, like, for example, San Antonio pulling in some extra wins and just things of that nature where the whole balance can shift, especially like Dallas, a team like Dallas. I could see them shifting the standings too.
Well, you got a couple of things to think about. Next year, do teams adjust their regular season play to what they now expect playoffs to be like? So you look at the Celtics and you look at the Cavs as a prime example. Heavy 3-point utilization numbers all throughout the regular season. Got you a lot of regular season wins, no success in the playoffs. So do we see other NBA teams back off that modern, analytics based 3-point shooting style to play more playoff style basketball in the regular season? Not to the extent that we're seeing now with, just crazy fouls all the time and defense galore, but, maybe just adjusted style. And then 2, in the West, you have 3 elite superstars that are about to retire. You have Curry, LeBron, and KD. And which one of those 3 guys, if any, could be none of them, which one of those 3 guys have one last push left in them? Curry obviously now has Jimmy Buckets with him for an offseason, just like LeBron has Doncic.
Yep.
And then KD's coming into a new environment. So will one of these old heads find a way to make it happen just one more time before they're done? I think if there is a year that this would be the case, this is probably going to be it, because they're maybe KD has a few more years left, but Steph and LeBron, they're probably ready to hang it up.
Well, and also, I mean, I could see the Warriors as having the assets to move to get one more guy. Because I mean, imagine Jimmy, Curry, Green, and one other dude. That would be pretty intimidating.
Yeah, they're saying Kuminga is, similar to us, kind of tying down their salary a little bit. So we'll see what happens there. The
Which
Lakers, they got, if they wanted, they could move on from AR-15, Austin Reeves.
yeah,
They could.
they're gonna get a center. There's no way they don't.
Mhm,
Between LeBron and Doncic not having a dominant, by dominant I mean rim running center,
mhm.
it doesn't make sense. Like the amount of assists that they can get and the amount of easy buckets they can get. Like I could even see someone like, since there's, it seems like they're trying to move him, someone like Gobert going there.
You saw what Doncic was able to do with lob threats
Yeah,
in Dallas. I mean, like, what are you going to commit to? Pick your poison, and then add in that same, feel with LeBron, um, just that lob threat, defensive presence. So yes, something's coming there. So as much as us as the Nuggets, OKC, Houston, have that younger core, those old heads, they want to make one more move before they're all done.
right. And they have a little bit of gravitas to make something happen.
So we'll look out. Early year prediction here, 2025 prediction for next season.
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting because obviously, that all affects the Nuggets because the draft is coming up pretty shortly. I'm not sure the exact date. What was it? The 25th or something like that?
Yeah, we're
Um,
talking. I think next Thursday or
it might be Wednesday.
yeah.
But that being said, the Nuggets unfortunately don't have any draft capital. Now, that doesn't mean that maybe they can't trade some cash consideration for a second round pick or something like that. But I don't think I've ever seen cash consideration for a first. Now, unless they're willing to move an actual prospect to get there, and if they can get there, unfortunately, I don't see any moves being made unless it's like, a trade or something of that nature, which, doom and gloom, it is what it is where we're at. But that being said, bright side um, would be that once we do convey this pick to, I want to say it's the Rockets this year, we actually open up our 2026 first round pick for trade because it's no longer a draft capital backup protection package. So then we actually have the 2026 and then 2031 picks available. So there is a little bit of a bright side where some assets are opening up. So that's kind of, what we're going to have to hold our hat on.
So giving us something to look forward to, right? Because the past 2 seasons, it has been just sit around and watch everybody else get better. And so far, history is repeating itself, and draft night will look exactly the same, where we watch other teams get better. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of Nuggets news for the draft, there won't be much to cover. One thing I do want to throw out, this is just a personal opinion here, as
Okay.
everything on this show. I don't know how far back, maybe 15, 20 years, there's been a handful of teams that produce multiple stars on the same team. UNC, I think Kansas, for sure, Kentucky, and probably a couple other college basketball teams. And here we are again. I'm looking at mock drafts, and we got 3 players from Duke and 2 players from Rutgers, all predicted within like the first 10 or 15. And I'm thinking to myself, unless this is Kentucky, when they could pay players, allegedly pay players pre name, image, and likeness, they better do some serious research when you get multiple top 15 picks from the exact same team.
Yeah.
Like Kentucky did it quite a few times where it's like John Wall and AD on the same team. Like, how's that?
Uh, there
How's
was
it
a
even happen? Oh,
there was a
and
lot of
Devin
them.
Booker.
Yeah, there
Uh,
was a lot.
all in the same team, and that's because they were paying players. Obviously, they say they weren't, but come on, how do you get that much talent on the exact
Right.
same team
Giving
at the
them
same
some
time?
tail.
So that is one thing just to look out for, and I could be completely wrong, but somebody from these teams, whether it's Duke or Rutgers, somebody's going to get the bad apple whose game was elevated as a result of somebody else being on the team, and now all of a sudden they look like a top 15 pick. So I'm curious to see how that folds out. And maybe the mock drafts are wrong, and maybe some, that third player from Duke, the center, drops to like 30s or something like that could happen, but we'll see.
Yeah, and I'm the vast minority here where I think Cooper Flag is overrated. Go ahead and drop that hot take. That's going to be my fourth and long. So I personally, when I watch him, I literally pulled up the footage to see if I was kind of thinking along the right lines. Reminds me of Blake Griffin when Blake Griffin was coming out, and like specifically his his skill sets, like everything, like in college, Blake Griffin was shooting deeper than he was originally in the NBA, and the handles are similar. Now, this doesn't diminish Blake Griffin as a player. Like he had a very solid NBA career, but I think people are acting as if Cooper Flag is like a savior, and I just don't think he's on that level.
Yeah, from what I've watched of him, haven't watched too much, but watched ACC tournament and also watched March Madness tournament. Um, he does seem to have that, and it could be because he's in college, he does at least have that ability to just get to his spots.
Yeah.
I know that's a common phrase, and we saw SGA do it far too many times this playoffs, whether it be push off or not. That's another topic for another day. That is one thing that I was seeing from his game is where he wanted to go. He would slowly find a way to get there, whether the defense wanted him to or not, which is unique skill set for somebody his size.
Yeah.
Won't draw like KD comparisons type thing, but has that lanky build to him, has the handles to get to where he wants to on the court, and the ability to rise up over defenders. So that's why I'm sure people are interested in him. Will he, like you said, turn around a franchise? That's a tough task that very few can do.
Yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned the getting to his spots regardless of defensive will, because that does have a similar factor to it of Paolo Banchero. Probably
Mm-hmm.
butchering his name there, but he did have that capability coming out.
Yeah, I'm a Duke fan, so actually I retired once Krzyzewski retired, but I still catch Duke. But I don't
Yeah,
I
you don't
don't
have a
fanboy
choice.
for him. I don't fanboy for him like I used to. Uh, and yes, Paulo Banchero. Um, he and I said this when he came out. I was like, if you want like a 35-year-old LeBron who's just like not super athletic, but can take the ball to the hoop hard, distribute, pass, get you triple double type, numbers, but get points in the 15s to 20s range. He's right there, and he's proven out to be that.
Yeah, he's
But
actually looking pretty good.
he's like I said, he's never like going to ever be LeBron level athleticism. But if you looked at him in his later ages, you probably see some similarities between the two games.
So, real quick and worth mentioning, just want to pivot a little bit here. Staying with the NBA, but they did on ESPN release the way too early power rankings for 2025-2026. Surprisingly enough, they have Denver in at number 3. It goes OKC, Minnesota, Denver Nuggets, Cleveland Cavaliers, and then Houston Rockets at 5. And this does include the Kevin Durant trade. Worth noting the addition, as they would put it, of the new coach. So apparently they think it's going to be addition by subtraction. I mean, just in general, that's encouraging. We could be sour on this because we're running the same thing back over and over, but on the bright side, we're still going to be a dark horse contender year in, year out, as long as we have Jokic. So that was at least interesting to see.
If you watch the playoffs objectively, obviously the Pacers brought them to 7, but Denver gave OKC probably the biggest fits of their entire run. I bet they'd say that too. Aside from the weight of the finals being the finals, I bet you that if closed room behind closed doors, hey, who gave you the toughest run? I wouldn't doubt they say the Nuggets, because
Oh, yeah.
there was multiple times we had that teams on the ropes, and hey, credit to them, they fought through, finished us off. But they were probably more panicking against us than any other team that they ran through all year.
Well, and to your point, last year's champions, the Celtics, said that they fully expected to see the Nuggets in the finals, and that when they saw the Nuggets got bounced, it was like a sigh of relief. Like, so, at least in the NBA circles, the Nuggets still have some gravitas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll have to check out that list, and the list will obviously change by the time we hit to the season, and by the time we hit to the trade deadline. There's power rankings about power rankings, so I'm gonna
Yeah.
have to check out the power rankings about their power ranking to
It,
make sure it's
it
good.
it'll change by Thursday when
Yeah, we might have
when
to
the
start our
draft
own
is
power
over.
rankings.
Hey, we will. I'm gonna throw you under the bus here, Vinny, because I want the top 5 Nuggets in terms of position. What it would be your top 5 team, and the reason why I'm saying throwing you under the bus is I didn't give you any prep time on this. So if you'd like, I could start off, and then that way you'd have at least a moment to think.
Is this like all time, or is this like
So
current? Or
so here's what we're gonna do, and this we can do a couple different ones of these, but this one's just gonna be offensive. So I'm talking the top 5 group you can put out there that's just gonna throw down the most points. So
most points?
yep,
Okay,
I'm gonna start off, and I think at point guard I would have Allen Iverson, and
hard to beat.
yeah, like I said, offensive. We're going offensive here. And then at shooting guard, I think I would throw Jamal Murray in there. And then small forward, I got to go with my boy. I love him, Carmelo Anthony. Fun story here, Carmelo Anthony is the one that got me into the Nuggets at a young age. So even though some people hate him, I still love him. And
Melo.
and then at number 4, this is the one I struggle between Thompson and English at. But I think I'm going to throw Thompson in there. And then at the 5 spot, obviously the GOAT, Nikola Jokic. So that's my top 5 offensive Nuggets lineup of all time. What would yours be?
Yeah, I don't think it'd be much different. I'm sure there's some old heads that'll be like, Dan Issel could
Yeah,
score
Dan
on
Issel's.
anybody,
Yeah,
or Kiki Vanderway.
yeah. I mean, there's definitely ones, but I'm just not as familiar with them. And plus, I mean, they probably have more all around game than these guys that are just offensive, And I could even be mistaken, but that's kind of the way I
No,
see it.
I get what you're going. So yeah, I don't think it'd be much different, but that also is recency bias for me as well.
Yeah.
I just didn't watch them as much, and then I'm sure like some that were tweeners would be like, Antonio McDyess could score on anybody, or Mahmoud Abdul Rauf when he was on, man. Like I'm sure there's people out there that have anything, but I was
Well,
trying to look at who all had
I'm
their
sure
number
somebody would
retired.
throw Earl Boykins on this. I mean, let's be real.
Hey, he's coming off the bench. So I was curious who all had their number retired. So Alex English, David Thompson, Fat Lever, Byron Beck, Dan Issel, Dikembe, which obviously isn't offensive, and then Doug Moe, but he's more for a coach. So yeah, recency bias definitely influences that, but I don't think I'd have any changes.
Okay. Right on. Well, do you got any final notes for the 2024-2025 NBA season?
Yeah, I mean, Adam Silver, just do better, man. Just do better. Let's figure out what you're doing with your product. Try and have the regular season somewhat like the postseason. Doesn't have to be the exact same product, but pretty darn close. I don't feel like I watch a different game when I watch NFL playoffs versus regular season. I know 17 versus 82 is a huge difference, but this is the first year in a long time I was like, what is this? This is not the same game that I've been watching all season long. Also, let's do a better job of figuring out how to bring some of these younger stars into the limelight. I don't know what it looks like, but gotta figure out what the transition looks like, because LeBron, there ain't much left. Curry, there ain't much left, and guys like SGA, he's just not doing it. I don't know what it is about his game. Maybe it's because I'm a hater, I'm a Nuggets fan, but when you watch it, it's like, what gets you excited about this? Let me drive to the left, drive to the right, push off, and hit an off balance midi.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's great from an execution standpoint. Like from a basketball purist standpoint, it's like, wow, like that's tough to do. Those who watch a lot of basketball understand how difficult it is to do what he's doing and make it look easy. But I don't know. It feels different from the NBA of many years ago. And maybe that's just because we saw so many dynasties where we saw just dominant players dazzling you night in, night out. Now it's just like, I don't know, seems a little watered down, the product right now.
What irritates me about the playoffs differential of whistles, that's what we'll call it, is the fact that the Nuggets knew that was the case when it happened to them last year. And then this year they acted surprised. This
Mm-hmm.
year they folded under pressure once again when they knew it was coming. And to me, it's like, dude, like you guys should run through some fouls on your bench guys in the first 3 quarters. If they're going to go back to old school NBA, then guess what? Go back to old school NBA, put a goon in there and hit some people. Like, teach them not to do that to you. I don't know. That's eye for an eye, but that's if we're blind, you're gonna be blind too.
Yeah. We saw the preview when Minnie bully balled us and Jamal threw his heat pack out because he was whining like a baby.
Crying.
But even this year, it felt like they even stepped it up one more notch of like, if they make it, don't call a foul at all. Wait until after they miss it, then call your fouls occasionally. And it was just such a stark contrast. So it'd be curious to see how the bench plays out, to your point. Like, do you send in some more physical players just to have that on your roster? Somebody who's not your traditional basketball player, but is the more football player playing basketball, just to rough up some stars a little bit and play physical defense and, get those fouls. So we'll see how the roster shapes, because we don't have that right now. That's for sure.
Yeah. And we'll see if any shakeups happen when we get back to you guys post draft. But that being said, we really appreciate you guys joining us for this journey tonight, talking through some of the sports we love. And we'll definitely give some Broncos love on the next one. But that being said, just remember, things could always be worse. You could have commitment issues like KD. We're here for you. Like, talk to us. Type it out in the chat. We're there for you. Like Vinny had mentioned earlier, go ahead and give us a like and follow, because, we're two handsome gentlemen. I'm just kidding. That's completely
it's because we desperately need it. Let's be honest.
Yeah, desperate.
If you've made it to the 30 some odd minute mark in this podcast, first and foremost, thank you. I don't know how.
Yeah.
And secondly, why not take the extra 30 seconds? Help us out.
Yeah, just a click. Hey, thanks, guys. You guys have a great night.
Anything's possible. Anything's possible.
In the Mile High City, where the lights shine bright, the Broncos fight hard in the cold, clear night. With every Hail Mary, our hopes take flight, and the Nuggets dribble dreams into the spotlight. 24 seconds, the clock's racing down. And hoops, me stand tall. With every dunk and three, we give it our all. In the city of champions, we heed the call. Together as one, we rise, never fall. With a quick crossover and a thunderous slam, the crowd's roaring wild, it's now or never, man. From the court to the field, we stake our claim. Together we'll rise, united in the game. Hit sticks collide, feel the energy surge. One we rise, never fall. So let's lace up tight, let the games begin. In Denver's heart where we all win.